So originally, this video was only going to be about the redistricting that's most likely going to end up happening in Texas and all the problems that have been caused by that. But quite recently, I saw a headline, and this is probably going to be the title of the video, of a former CNN correspondent, Jim Acosta, interviewing an AI version of a student, 17-year-old student, Joaquin Oliver, who was killed in 2018 in a school shooting down in Florida. And this AI version, the conversation was really just about gun control laws and mental health groups and mental health support for people that eventually are the people who end up shooting in schools and shooting in public. And of course, I do think that's a pretty important thing. But this interview has caused some pretty, it's caused some backlash and some people that are on the side of the father of Joaquin, who is the person who made this AI version of his son. And he said that it wasn't to, it wasn't an attempt to revive his son, but it was more of an attempt to commemorate his son. And me personally, I didn't see the entire interview. I just saw a few minutes, and I think that was enough, a few bits of the interview. And right away, I just found this a little bit unsettling. I didn't really like that, there's an AI version of a dead human talking, and much less promoting Democrat points of view and their talking points, especially in gun control. But what was really unsettling was the fact that this person is no longer alive, but they're just making an AI, I guess, somewhat replacement of it. And this happened about 7 years ago. That student was killed about 7 years ago. He was killed in 2018, as I mentioned before, in a Florida school shooting, or Florida. It was a shooting. I'm pretty sure it was a school, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, he was killed a few years ago, and of course, it's tragic that these things happen. But preventing, or I guess restricting the access to weapons isn't going to stop people killing each other with gun violence. That's just not going to end the problem. I mean, well before we had guns, we had swords and knives and whatever, and we still managed to kill each other without guns. And if you look at it, it's a pretty stupid point that Democrats make a lot. And of course, gun violence is not something that should be taken lightly, but we also shouldn't be restricting citizens to own guns and possess certain guns. Of course, some things aren't really going to be for sale. Certain weapons, handguns, rifles, I guess, some like snipers, certain things that will be for sale because people hunt. People also have the right to defend their home. And some things are, in most cases that we see of school shootings and whatnot, it's students or, students, kids of, that live with whoever, their legal guardian or parents or whatever, that just take the gun of whoever they live with and take it to school and shoot the school. And, of course, that's not something that should still be happening. I really do think that there should be parents that are more responsible that just don't allow that to happen, because it really happens way too frequently. And gun violence outside of schools is also a thing. I believe today, or it might have been yesterday, another shooting that killed like 4 people in California. But I really just found that unsettling that they're using this AI version to for interviews and whatever. And I guess that the father and obviously also the mother of the now dead son, obviously don't want their son to just like be forgotten. But that doesn't really give them, I guess, an excuse or whatever to, have this person on interviews in CNN or whatever. I really just found that quite unsettling, and I believe many people also found that rather unsettling. I believe he on a website, social media, he posted this interview or something about it, and he just turned off the comments. And that kind of indicates that he does know what he's doing. It's not like he has a pure view on what he really thinks that should be happening. I'm pretty sure he knows what he's doing. And on another social media, I believe it might have been X. He did not turn off the comments, but it's still pretty clear that he knows what he's doing because he turned off the comments on the main platform where he's vocal in, I guess. And people didn't really, at least some people didn't really take that interview very well. I really just found that very unsettling. Anyway, the next thing that I was really just going to base this entire video on is the Texas redistricting. And if I mispronounce that word or stutter or whatever on that word, it's a little bit difficult to say when you're talking sort of fast. So bear with me. But yeah, this redistricting in Texas is something that President Trump and apparently also the Governor Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, have been talking about. I believe President Trump asked him to do this, or at least that's what's being said. And this is to increase the GOP majority, or at least to hold it for the upcoming midterms. By about 5 seats, apparently. And, the Democrats in the House of Texas, the, I guess, House of Representatives for the state of Texas, have not taken this well, because obviously some of them will lose their seats and they will lose power. And obviously they don't want that to happen. And one of the strategies, I guess, that have been employed to, I guess, stop this is them fleeing the state of Texas and just being at other states like Illinois, New York, I believe, and I believe some of them also went to California. And, they left the state because if in Texas, I believe the number of representatives in the Texas House of Representatives is 150, and you need a minimum of 100 of these representatives to actually start a quorum, and that would allow the legislation to proceed and to the redistricting to happen. But 51 of them actually fled the state, so that's just about enough for the House of Representatives of Texas to be unable to proceed because of their own laws. And now they can't really do anything. They just have to, I guess, wait for them to come back. But the governor of Texas has said that, has actually given out arrest warrants for these representatives. And these arrest warrants can only be, I guess, used in the state of Texas. And, considering that they all fled, these warrants are pretty much useless in Illinois and New York and California. So, if one of them was still in the state, they're not. They took a pretty expensive private jet to go to other states, about $100,000. It costs about $17,000 to keep the plane flying per hour. It costs about $17,000 to keep the plane flying, per hour, and that's pretty crazy. And there's also questions as to who actually paid for this. These people who work for, office for elected offices, don't exactly get paid that much. It's usually 100 or it's usually in between 100 and 200K. But there's obviously so corrupt politicians. Pelosi has been working in public office for like 50 years or 40 years. And, she's a millionaire, and, it's not like her spouse works a very, lucrative job or a CEO of a company. Stocks and insider trading. The Pelosi Act gets into that. I'm not going to get into that in this video, though. But, these representatives could not have possibly paid for this. I mean, this is about, what, like $2,000 if they each paid their seat, I guess, or portion. And, it means that somebody else most likely ended up paying for this plane flight to Illinois or whatever. And, this blocking of the House to proceed with the legislation has actually happened before. Not only in Texas, it also happened in my own state, Indiana, in, I believe, 2011, and it also happened in Oregon, and it's also happened in Texas before, in like 2003. And again, most of these attempts are just useless. They fail anyway. I believe they have all been by Democrats, except the one in Oregon. But they're pretty much useless. The legislation ends up passing anyway. So, I mean, it's not really useful. And there's also a $500 per day fine for blocking quorum. And, that's not exactly a very big fine for these people who somehow make millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And a little side note is Jasmine Crockett is actually probably most likely going to end up losing her seat because how the districts will be redrawn. She will most likely end up losing her seat because where she currently lives is not going to be included where in the district that she currently represents. So that new district is going to be her home is not in that district, so she can't represent that district. And I believe if she were to compete in the new district, where she, I guess, would be assigned to represent, I guess, if she were to run for office, she would lose pretty badly. I believe it's a pretty Republican district. And, it's a pretty good thing to actually get certain people out of our Congress and House of Representatives. Some people I really just don't know how they got there. AOC, Jasmine Crockett, and a few other not very bright minds. But yeah, in general, this whole thing has caused pretty big chaos in the state of Texas, and some other states are, I guess, planning their retaliation to obviously, I guess, even out the balance in the House of Representatives. And, some states really take it to a whole nother level. And I'll get into that in a second. But, districts should really be pretty basic, blocks and squares. Of course, there are a few exceptions because some states have weird shapes and weird angles, I guess. State of Indiana has it's kind of like a boot, and in the bottom part it's not straight lines. It's pretty bumpy. So obviously that wouldn't be very blocky. But anyway, that would mean that some districts would be a little bit off in terms of like size and shapes. But some states really take this to a whole nother level, like Illinois. They have about 9 districts coming from Chicago, so it's like, they have a few. I'll show the photo, and they have several districts coming from Chicago, and the purpose of districts and redistricting is to squeeze out any political advantage that you can. I believe in Illinois, in the last election, Trump v. Harris. Trump obviously lost the state, Harris won the state, but it wasn't by a super crazy margin. And if you look at the representation of Illinois, about 82% of the representation that they have in Congress is Democrat, and 82% of the voters did not vote for Kamala. It was more like 50 to 60%. And they really managed to squeeze like a really big advantage out of that. And Texas is redistricting, but not at the same level as like Illinois. It's still some pretty basic blocky, I guess, shapes, and there are some weird, I guess, dots, but it's also split by like population. It's not just you can't also just make squares or along the entire state, because obviously major cities and capital cities, and you have to split those pretty evenly. But and if you look at the, I guess, new proposed or even the old one of districts in Texas, there's like small dots, and those are really just the major Democrat cities, and there's really big Democrat cities in like every state. So those are still there, and that's fine, because if you made the entire like if you expanded that dot and made it like a basic square across the entire map, or taking the I guess an equal portion of the map, it wouldn't actually represent the real population that's supposed to be within a district. It would be pretty uneven. Like 90% of the voters would be like in the city, and the other 10% would be outside of the city, and that'd be like, I don't know, like 20% of the entire state population in like one district. And they have plenty of districts. It's a really big state. And yeah, that's the point of like districts and redistricting. And political advantages that can be squeezed out are, some states don't really, I guess, use it to the full extent, I guess, to like not escalate this whole partisan war. But some states are using the power that they have. I believe California and New York themselves are also planning on doing some redistricting themselves. And Illinois, again, they have some pretty weird districts. I believe also Maryland has a pretty weird one. They call it the earmuffs district. Yeah, it's pretty weird. I'll try to show what it looks like on the screen. But again, yeah, some of these districts are pretty weird looking, and they're really just trying to get as many Democrat seats, or as many, say, Republican seats in the House as they can, even if it doesn't actually represent their entire, what their state actually is composed of. Again, like I said earlier, Illinois, 82% of their representation is Democrat, and 18% is Republican, but 82% of the state is not Democrat, and 18% is not Republican. It's obviously, those numbers are not very accurate, and I guess it's fine to have like a little bit of like wiggle room. It doesn't have to be 100% matching, but that's pretty big difference. And even Texas, when they do eventually pass this legislation, because it's very, very likely to happen, and it's almost guaranteed. We just have to wait till either the Democrats get replaced or they come back. They probably will just get replaced, or just have to fight their arrest warrants. But yeah, once they get back and this whole thing gets voted on and proceeded and actually applied to the state, it's still pretty basic, right? It's not anything out of the ordinary. It's pretty, I guess, natural for districts and across all of America. And the Democrats have really been fighting this and have been trying to stop this, although it's not really going to work. It's going to happen anyway. It might just happen a few days later, but that doesn't really matter. The midterms are like in a year, and the state of Texas will definitely not wait a year for the Democrats to come back. They could either get removed or replaced, and most likely, I'd say a few more days before any of that happens. And the former Attorney General Ken Paxton of Texas has also made a few comments on that. And again, he's one of the ones that was referenced by Governor Abbott to remove or replace these Democrats that have fled the state and are apparently unable to complete their duties as elected officials. So they would be replaced or removed from their current office. And I guess that would be good for the state of Texas because, one of the people in the some of the representatives are, again, not very well. They're not very stable mentally, I would say, and I'm specifically referring to Jasmine Crockett. But there's obviously a few others. But the main thing is that this has caused a lot of fallout in the past few days, and it's only been going on for a few days, and again, I really don't think that it will go on for more than a week or two. And this legislation will most likely be passed. And, the Republican majority in the House of Representatives will, again, most likely be expanded. And I'm talking about the actual House of Representatives that is for the entire country, not just for Texas. But, yeah, they both will probably be expanded. And this, I guess, is fine, but they're fighting it because it's like halfway through the term, of the entire all the representatives and senators and whatnot, and that's why the main reason that's obviously because they're probably gonna end up losing their seats, but the second reason that they're, I guess, using the most to lead their argument is because it's like halfway through the terms. And I mean, they could do it either way, but it just, I guess, makes sense to do it now for some reason. But either way, they're probably just going to end up losing a few seats. And the Republicans are probably going to gain apparently 5. But, if California and New York do a little bit of redistricting too, they might not have a majority of 5 in the House. It might be 3 or 2 or a 1 again. And yeah, that's really it for today's video. Let me know what you think about this whole redistricting thing. And if your state has any weird districts. I know a few states that definitely have a few weird ones, and it's not exactly pretty, and it's kind of obvious what they're trying to do. But yeah, just let me know what you think, and if you have any weird districts in your state. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video, so thank you for watching.